Okay. Um, Good evening to everyone and welcome back. I hope you had a nice vacation and time off and time um, and are enjoying the snow. I think everyone is having snow right now. So enjoy it as much as you can. Um, and tonight we're actually beginning this week, the beginning of the second book of Moses, right? As they say in Swedish or in some of the Nordic countries. But in Hebrew, we call it Shmot, which is interesting because, in other words, in Latin, right, you have different names. Um, in other words, the second book of Moses, right, you can call it, but the generally it will be called the book of Exodus, whereas in Hebrew it's called Shmot, which means the names, which is actually just following the second word uh, of um, of the second book of Moses, which is the Shmot, and these are the names of the children of Israel, or the children of Jacob that came down to Egypt. But it's also something of essence that we could discuss very much at length. What is the meaning of a name and how a name is important when one is not in your own country. Um, and I see some of us here even on the screen. Some of us have um, names that are based in the Bible. Some of us have Latin names. Some of us have Nordic names, or maybe a mix of both. And for example, when someone converts, then that a person will take upon themselves a Hebrew name. When someone is born, they're given by their parents a Hebrew name, either at the Brit, at the circumcision, or on the first Shabbat after the baby girl is born. So the father will go up to the Torah and give the name. And a name is something which is very important. And the Midrash that we won't learn today, but I'm giving you a um, promo into a midrash that you can look up yourselves. The midrash says that there were few things of distinction that allowed the Jewish community, the Jewish people. They were a family. They are now becoming a people, and we became a people in exile. Right? We came down, and all of the grandchildren of Jacob came down and sort of formed into a people in exile, which is interesting in itself. And the Midrash says that there were a few things of distinction that they did not change. They didn't yet have the kosher laws, for example. Um, one of the Midrashim says they were keeping Shabbat, but it doesn't say so in the Torah. But one of the most distinctive things that they kept were the Hebrew names. And I see Hebrew names and not Jewish names because that's also a question. And Jewish comes from Yehuda, which is a specific tribe. But at the time, we know that they were called Hebrews, right? Or also, even one place in Egypt was found in the archaeology that the name Israel is also even mentioned in in the stones, he, Egyptian names. So, but the name Israel we know was given to Jacob, and we have distinctive Hebrew names that are mentioned at the beginning of the chapter. Some of those names continue until this day. So there is a point to saying, how do we survive as a minority in a surrounding majority culture, which is pagan very strongly, right? Worshipping gods. We know that, right? Also from the archaeology, but also from the description in the Torah. They're keeping, right? Pharaoh himself was a god. They're serving him as a god, and he doesn't. Um, he says to Moshe, "Who is this God that you speak of? I don't know him." So the names are a very important factor. What do I change, or what do I want to change in order to sort of fit in? And we can see that um, in Europe, for example, through the emancipation process, the process of emancipation, and then the acculturation of the Jews into the surrounding European culture. So one of the things they did was they said, "Oh well, we'll keep our Jewish name for the Bet Knesset, right? We'll keep it for when we go up to the Torah, or but we want to be known. We just want to be like everyone." And that is a point of from acculturation to assimilation, to assimilation. So keeping a name and keeping distinct is very important. And within that, of course, comes the question of, well, if we are distinct, does that create hate towards us? Um, will it help if we just try to fit in and be like everyone else? And of course, reflecting back both in these days and also back to the 30s in Germany when the Jews, right? Or you can even go back to the um, that momental moment in history of the Dreyfus affair, in which that was the moment that Theodor Herzl realized that when he sees a captain a, in the French army who has made it, sort of, he's become right, and he just degraded in the way that he was. Herzl, as a journalist, stood there and said to himself, if this is the case, then the Jews will always be distinct and they will always be hated as such, and there's no cure for anti-Semitism. And that was one of the really the decisive factors in him towards looking for a political solution, which he wrote in his first thesis, right, about Alt Neuland, the new land, and the Jewish state. Um, so all of that is not what we're going to be talking about today. Just points of reference and thought from the first words of this week's parasha, which just shows how much we have in this week's parasha to actually um, be going through and thinking about. And this is in a way connected to what I would like to talk about today, because the question that should be lingering in our mind, um, just like I just did with you right now, is where is the where's the parasha um, when we read the parasha this coming week? So what is happening to the Jewish people, right? What is and we're in a very important phase in which they are now becoming slaves in Egypt. They are becoming a people. They are a minority. They're trying to spare their identity. What's happening with their belief? Do they believe? Do they not believe? And all of that. Um, we have also in this week's parasha the very important role of the child bearers, right? The those who are um, the the those who are helping the mothers give birth. Hamiyaldot, that's why I call it the child bearers. That would be the proper translation from Hebrew. Right, they're carrying the children into this world and helping the mothers give birth and also helping spare them from this terrible decree of killing all of the wiping out the Jewish race by killing out all of the sons. So all of that is in our minds as we go through, and as you can imagine, there are many, many midrashim that um, to be chosen from that we could be learning today, having all of this in mind. But um, the subject that I chose with all of this background is a very important figure that that we meet this week for the first time. Um, Speaking of names, I carry his name, right? Moshe, um, who becomes, uh, uh, I would say, a model figure of not only for the Jewish people, but is seen as such until this day. Many look at Moses and the character of Moses. You even have a film, right, about an animation film about Moses. Really, what I would like to go into the question is, if we want to look at what does it mean to be a leader, what are the characters of a leader? So that is very much seen in Moshe, but also I would say, what are the beginning failures of that the leader has to deal with when he has the characteristics to be a leader, but the the people are not ready. really, really ready for him. And I think when anyone who has this thought that if you're thinking of in what am I a leading position, what can I lead others, what can I be helpful to others, where can I? The question is also you might have a wonderful idea. But the question is, are those at the other end really ready to receive it? Are they there for you? And this is one of the beginning, I would say, the thing that worries Moshe the most. He says to Hashem, who are these people that will listen, that they won't listen to me? They're not in a place. I can, you can show yourself to me, and I believe in you, but they won't believe in me. And I think that's actually a question which according to the Mefarshim, right, according to some of the commentators, this is not questioning Hashem, it's questioning the place of the people. How can I, leaving that question for us, how can I become a leader if the people are not ready for me to lead them? Right? If I try to lead someone and they are not ready for it, in whatever capacity that may be. But just to go through before we look at the Midrash and one of the very important characteristics of the leader, um, I want to just remind us sort of the flow, right, of the parasha and what we are taught. So when we first one of the if we just I'll just go through right some of the what if we go through the story of Moshe that we know from the Torah. So we know that he is born. We know who is his father, his grandfather, his great grandfather, going back to Yaakov. And the Torah immediately leads us into the character after telling us about the children, the decree of the firstborn that they would be um, um, killed. Um, then the Torah leads us immediately from that into the story of Moshe and his mother who hides him for 3 months and eventually is unable to hide him anymore and has to sort of let him go. And he's sent along the river, along the Nile River, where through this story he becomes basically a prince of Egypt. And no one knows that he's Jewish. His adoptive mother, who's the daughter of Pharaoh, takes him in. Um, and if we look at if we think about where Moshe grew up as a child, so he grows, unlike the Jewish people who had set themselves aside all the way from the time of Yosef. They had purposely Yosef, in order for them not to assimilate, he had set them into a separate, the land of Goshen, into the area of the delta the where as shepherds, we'll come back to that, but where as shepherds they had all of the fertile land, but that they were kept away from the Egyptians. So unlike them, Moshe grows up in the palace of Pharaoh. He's speaking Egyptian. Apparently, he looks Egyptian enough. How do we know that he looks like an Egyptian? Because in his first encounter, when he runs away from Pharaoh, he comes to the land of Midian and saves the daughters there of the priest, the Kohen of Midian, who later becomes his father-in-law, a Yitro. And what it says there is the daughters come to Yitro and they say to him, "The Egyptian man has saved us." So apparently he looks Egyptian, he sounds Egyptian, and that's his culture. His culture is completely that of an Egyptian. And the first time he's mentioned, right, in that external, right, outside of Egypt, he's called Isha Mitzri. He is a person of Egypt, unlike all of the Hebrew slaves who are very distinctively different. So, but what do we see in his first character as a leader? The fact that he is um, looking sort of coming out of the palace and finding that people are not treated right. It's a shock to him that there's abuse, that you have the servants, right, the policemen basically of Pharaoh who are watching over the servants, and one of them goes and he starts hitting, right? One of the Hebrew, right here it says specifically the Hebrew man, um, and instinctively Moshe cannot stand um, seeing this inhumane act, and he basically takes action and he kills the Egyptian. It's quite obvious that by doing such an action, he's put his life in danger, and probably putting many of the Jewish servants' life in danger because of the slaves, because all they want is to be able to get home quietly. They don't want to be whipped. They don't want to be right. A slave mentality is just let's go through the day as quiet as possible, go home, hope we have something to eat, and right soothe our broken bones. That's what a slave is, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu, it's obvious he's an Egyptian on the one hand, but he's not Egyptian because he's standing up um, for others, and he also feels for his brothers, which it says right that he knows that they are his brothers. So, um, putting his life at danger, Moshe has to run away, even though he grew up in the palace. It's not going to help him, and the he runs off, as we said, to the land of Midian, and um, there he meets um, um, the daughters of Yitro, who their job are they're all shepherdesses, right? Which is interesting in itself, right? You have these young females who are out there also risking. Apparently, Yitro doesn't have a son, right? He has daughters only, and they're all out there trying to protect themselves, but this is their livelihood. They don't have any other livelihood, and they're out there, and I think it's obvious from the actual, when we read the psukim itself, the Yitro really cares about them a lot. Every day he worries, are they going to come home safely? But there's basically no choice. And there's also no mercy. Because when someone is merciful, then it is noticed. And this we can take back to the story we know of Rivka, right? When she is merciful, it comes as a surprise to Eliezer. In other words, these are people out there who are caring for themselves. It's very rough to be a shepherdess out there. And Moshe comes to the rescue and he helps them out. So much so that Yitro says, "Go find this man." Even though if he find him and bring him um, to eat, to break bread with us. So um, all I've done now is go through the psukim, getting to the point of what I would like to look at today. Then there's a paraphrase of the Torah in which the king of Mitzrayim has died, and the Am Yisrael start crying and yelling to Hashem, and their cries are lifted up to the heavens to Hashem from the slave labor that they are going through. And it says that God listened to their cries, and God remembered his brit, um, his oath, his promise to Avraham, to Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and he remembers them. So but this also means that if the king has died, then the decree has passed, and Moshe is basically able to go back to Egypt, right? So all I've done now is go through the psukim with you to a pasuk which says um, that tells us that Moshe has what has happened to him. He has become a shepherd of his father-in-law. He's married one of the daughters. Her name is Tzipporah, and Moshe has become a shepherd of right of the sheep of Yitro, who is the priest of Minyan, and he's taking Vayinhag. He's driving the sheep into the desert, and he comes to the mountain of God, which is called Horeb. And we know later on that this place of Horeb is, first of all, where we have the burning bush, where Hashem reveals himself to Moshe. And secondly, this becomes the mountain of Sinai, where the Torah will later be given. Right? So when Am Yisrael come out, so Moshe does a circle, basically goes back to Egypt and brings the people back to the place um, of Chorev, to this place right in the middle of the desert. So all of I'd like to take one more characteristic here, which is the fact that Moshe was a shepherd, and learn together a midrash with you, which eventually will come to this point of what does it mean to be a shepherd, and why is that important for any leader to follow the characteristics of a shepherd. But if we think of it even before we look at the midrash, then it's obvious to us. We know that, right? All of our forefathers were basically shepherds, right? Um, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, right? We have Moshe. We know the story of Yosef and his brothers. They're also right. We have them as shepherds, and later on we have many other shepherds, including King David, who is a shepherd as well. We can even say we are people of shepherds. That's how we are also presented to Pharaoh by Yosef. That we are. That's what our. You can say, well, different people in different cultures. What is their culture? So the culture of the people of Israel are to be shepherds, and we see that of all people, especially when we have the story of David, we have people who are doing other things at the time, but Hashem is looking for a shepherd to be the shepherd of the people. So one last thing um, before we look at the pasuk, if we look at the final moments of Moshe if we go forward toward the end of the um, the fourth book of Moses, Bamidbar, in the desert, right? So there it says when Hashem says to Moshe that he will be dying after 120 years. So he says, what is his concern? So he says, Hashem, you can't leave Am Yisrael alone. Who shall go out before them and come in before them? And who shall take them out and bring them in? So that Hashem's community may not be like sheep that have no shepherd. So even in the way that Moshe Rabbeinu describes Am Yisrael, he's basically describing us as sheep, right? That we need someone to let us out to the pasture. We need someone to let us back into, right, at night into the protected area. If it reminds me very much of King David, right, who says, right, Mizmor li David. We sing this during Suda Shlishit in the third meal. Hashem ro'i lo ichzar. Right, God, there will be nothing right lacking for me. And then he says, "Bin od deshe yarbiteni," right? That I will be laying down in the grass, right? And basically, King David is talking of Am Yisrael like sheep. So sheep need a leader to lead them, and also, right, this motion of being a part of a flock. You're a part of a people. You have a belonging. You're never alone in that sense. You don't find a sheep very far away from its flock, which we will also see in the Midrash. So the Midrash begins with the first words. I can change to just to the English maybe. And let us read the Midrash. Would anyone like to help us here? Anyone feel like reading?
I can do it.
So I guess it's up to me.
Yeah, and Moses was now is black, so I don't see what is. Maybe I just see black. I don't see the letters.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Because Paula, I couldn't hear you, but can you hear me? You can hear
Yeah, I
me.
hear you, but I cannot read the text because it's not very well. I see just half of the text. So maybe it's my.
Okay.
Okay, now I see it.
Moses was hurting. Yeah, that is what is written. God was in his sacred sanctuary. Rabbi, let's just read through the Midrash and then we'll see how it is connected. It's interesting because it's sort of Moses was hurting, this is our pasuk, and then the Midrash is going to go through and tell us, giving a teaching, and eventually at the end we'll come back to the idea of Moses was hurting. So it's so that is what is written. God was in his sacred sanctuary. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman said, until the temple was destroyed, the divine presence rested in it. As it is stated, God was in his sacred sanctuary. When the temple was destroyed, the divine presence removed itself to the heavens. As it is stated, the Lord established his throne in the heavens. So, completely different discussion here than what we were talking about in the speakers here. Can you still hear me okay?
Now we hear you better.
We don't hear you, Moshe David. And the text is black.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now it's
Yes, we can.
more better. It's more better now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I hope it's okay. Okay, you just let me know if you can hear me okay. Yes?
Very good, thank you.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. So basically the Midrash here goes forward with a very interesting question. What something that we call the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And where is the divine presence? And forget a second the title, which was Moshe was hurting, because it will take us a while to get back to this. But a question that sometimes we ask ourselves, where is it mentioned in Jewish sources that we have something called a divine presence? What we call the Shekhinah, right? That God's glory or God's presence or spiritual, right, entity exists, right? Where is it? So it says that God was in his sacred sanctuary. Shmuel Bar Nachman said, until the temple was destroyed, the divine presence rested in it. As it is stated, God was in his sacred sanctuary. When the temple was destroyed, the divine presence removed itself to the heavens. As it is stated, the Lord established his throne in the heavens. So the basic idea here, right, is that what we call the galut, when we say we are in exile. So what does it mean? That not only are we in exile, but that God also does not have a place in this world. Which is a very strong statement, because we say God exists everywhere. We believe that God, right, exists, but spiritually, it's as if someone is kicked out of their home. It's as if God is homeless. So where does the Shekhinah go when when the temple was destroyed? basically back to heavens. God doesn't have a place for the Shekhinah within this world. Rabbi Elazar says, the divine presence did not move from the sanctuary. As it is stated, my eyes and my heart will be there. And likewise it says, I will call to the Lord with my voice, and he answered me from his sacred mountain, Selah. Even though it is ruins, it is in ruins, it retains its sanctity. Come and see what Shiur says. He is the God who is in Jerusalem. He said to them, even though it is ruins, God does not move from there. So we have a second opinion. The first opinion is very black and white, right? Of Shmuel Bar Nachman, if God has a home, then his Shekhinah has a place to be. But if not, then he's basically not here at all. Rabbi Elazar says, right, no, even though the place, the temple itself is in ruins, so God is still there in some way, and also the place itself of where the temple was is a place of holiness, because it is a place in which the divine presence exists till even though it is in ruins. Rabbi Acha said, the divine presence never moves from the western wall. As it is stated, behold, he is standing behind our wall. And it is written, his eyes behold, his eyelids assess the sons of man. So here we have a source. If you ask yourself, what is the source that the western wall is, right, has something special about it? So the source in this Midrash, right, is Rabbi Acha, who tells us, yes, there is something special about the western wall, right, of the temple. And maybe also he's reflecting on the fact historically that everything else was completely destroyed, and the western wall until this day, right, the external part of the western wall, the foundation, exists until this day, sort of as a you can say as a foothold for the divine presence to continue to exist throughout. Rabbi Yanai says, even though his presence is in the heavens, his eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of man. This is analogous to a king who had an orchard and built a tall tower in it. The king commanded laborers into it to engage in his labor. The king says, anyone who is industrious in his labor will receive his payment in full, and anyone who is indolent in his labor will be placed in prison. The king, that is the King of Kings, the orchard, that is the world that the Holy One, blessed be He, gave to Israel in which to observe the Torah. He stipulated to them, saying, one who observes the Torah, the Garden of Eden is before him, and one who does not observe it, behold, Gehenna, right, or Gehenom. Indeed, the Holy One, blessed be He, although he appears to be removing his divine presence from the temple, his eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of man. Whom does he test? He tests the righteous. As it is stated, the Lord will test the righteous. It is with sheep herding. Okay? So here we come to a connection, but before we do so, I want to, right, go back and make sure that we all understand, right, the mashal, right, this analogy of the king. Basically, I think what Rabbi Acha and Rabbi Acha says, the Shekhinah continues to exist. It cannot be possible that the Shekhinah completely is non-existent. But Rabbi Yanai asks another question, which he's answering through this analogy, which is, right, if the Shekhinah does not exist, can we even have a relation to Hashem? In other words, when we open the Siddur, right, or every time we make a bracha, every time we make a blessing, we are directing it to God and saying, you, right, Baruch Atah Hashem, Hashem, you are blessed. So Hashem is existent for us in feeling, in spirituality,
and in someone that we can turn to. If we say that as long as the temple is destroyed, then, right, God is non-existent. If I take this analogy and give my own, then basically you're saying that the orchard has been left and that no one will deal with it. No one will be taking care of it whatsoever. So what Rabbi Acha is saying, Rabbi Yanai says here, is that yes, there's an orchard. Yes, it has been left, but there's a tall tower in it. And the people are put within, right, this, within the walls, and they are the ones to be taking care of it and taking care of the orchard. Maybe you could say before the king was taking care of it because, right, and then suddenly the people themselves are are the ones who are taking care of it. So there's two ways to look at it. Either you believe the Midrash and you say, well, God is in the tower, they're overlooking us at all times, and therefore we must be, right, truthful to the labor, but he is there watching over us. And I think that even if you, the very fact that someone is looking at you or over, even if you can't speak to that person, it makes a difference, right? Imagine if you have, I don't know if you can use a modern day analogy. Imagine if you have a camera on in your home and you know that it's open to, right? Or you have your phone on and you're talking to your mother and then you continue on with your work, but you know that your mother's there looking at you at all times. Of course, you have a relationship, even if you're not talking. Your mother's on mute, right? And all she is looking through the video and she can watch you or watch the kids or whatever. Of course, that feeling is the mother is present, even though there's no communication. In that sense, maybe that's what the Midrash is trying to give over here, saying that yes, the temple itself was destroyed, and we don't have the meeting with Hashem, as it says in the Torah, that when you have the temple, it says shalosh pa'amim b'shana yira'eh kol zchucha, at least three times a year, right? We would go and feel the presence of Hashem in the temple. So imagine if you're off and you can just say, "Oh, I'm going to meet God. I'm going to the temple. See you tomorrow," right? That's a completely different relationship. Imagine how much that really can fill you up. It's like with everything that you need. You go there, you see the Levites in their song and its spirituality. You purify yourself. You go up to the temple. You meet the Kohanim. You can bring an offer of thanks or an offer or a sin offering and really feel that you have a very deep relationship in spirituality. And I think that part of the challenge that we all feel with this exile is that we have to reproduce that ourselves. The idea of the Bet Knesset, the synagogue, is a small, right, Mikdash Me'at, sort of a small temple, is to give us a little bit of this feeling. But going back to the Midrash here, right, anyone who's been to the Kotel, right, if you go to the Western Wall, right, I've heard many stories, but I heard a personal story of someone says, "I don't believe in God, but I'm going to go there just to, to respect the family." And that person suddenly felt, I'm thinking of a specific story that I heard, that person suddenly felt something they never felt in their life. And they were pulled back, right, and couldn't leave the Kotel. And suddenly they started crying for hours. That the thing of feeling the divine presence should be the most natural thing in the world, but it's not. And that's what this Midrash is talking about. The fact that God is infinite, but we don't feel the infinite. We have to think in our mind, or maybe even try to, philosophize about God's existence or non-existence. Does he exist? In what way it is? Because we don't have the temple, we don't have that feeling of a home of God that we can actually go to, and we have to sort of create that for ourselves. But at the end of the day, Hashem's the continuation here is that we have a garden to take care of, and this garden, this orchard that we're supposed to take care of, is at the end of the day, who does Hashem judge whether they have taken care of the orchard properly is not, right? Those who are non-righteous, they'll go straight to hell. But those who are righteous, they will be tested to see how well they took care of the orchard. And how are they tested? They are tested with shepherding. So here comes the connecting factor back to this pasuk, because wait, how did all of this, what does all of this have to do with Moshe was hurting, right? So let's see what the connection is. So Hashem tests the righteous with shepherding. He tested David with flocks and found him a fine shepherd. As it is stated, he took him from the sheepfolds. What are miklaot tzon? It is like the rain was restrained. He would hold back the large ones. Okay, this is a play on words. We won't get into the Hebrew play on words, but he would hold back the large ones, the large sheep, due to the small ones, and would take out the small ones so they could graze on the soft grass. Then the old ones so they can graze on the middling grass. Then he would take out the choice ones to graze on the tough grass. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, one who knows how to herd the flocks, each according to its ability, will come and herd my people. That is what is written, from the suckling ooze he brought him to herd Jacob his people. Moses too, the Holy One, blessed be he, tested him only with flocks. Our rabbis say when Moses, may he rest in peace, was herding Yitro's flock in the wilderness, a kid, right, a baby goat, fled from him. He pursued it until it reached cover. Once it reached cover, it happened upon a pool of water, and the kid stopped to drink. When Moses reached it, he said, I didn't know that you were running due to thirst. You are tired. He carried it on his shoulder and was walking. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, you have the compassion to behave with the flocks belonging to flesh and blood in this manner. By your life, you will herd my flock Israel. That is Moses was herding. So this beautiful Midrash, right, basically says to us that I'd like to try to think of the connection of the two of them, of the two parts of the Midrash. But basically, we're given an example here of two righteous who were tested with flocks because they were shepherds. We have the case of King David, right? We know, right? And here the Midrash tells us a story that was given over, right, about David flocking the sheep. And it's not only that he's taking care of them properly, but he sees the needs of each and every one of the sheep. So he knows how to let the young ones out, and then the middle ones, and then the older ones, and take care of each and every one of them according to their own needs. And shepherding takes a lot of patience, because you have to be able to notice each and every one's needs. The second example is a bit different, if you noticed. The example of Moshe is that taking care of sheep takes a lot of control. Many of us think of this, right? Well, of this romantic picture of being out there with the flocks and playing your flute, and the sheep just gathering around you. And yes, there could be some moments like that, like King David said, like all the sheep are just resting in the grass. But I can tell you from my own experience of herding goats that I think goats are worse than sheep. But they're constantly, it's like, sometimes you say, just be happy with what you are, with what you have. Why do you think that the grass over there is much better than the one that you have right now? Because they're constantly running, but also naturally that's part of their exercise, and it's also part of the natural fertilization process, right? Where they're walking, especially in the desert, where, right, that is a very important part. It can also be destructive, because if they're eating the wrong things, or they can very easily destroy others. There's a Mishnah that says that that it was forbidden, right? One of the decrees of our sages, that it became forbidden to grow a sheeps and goats in with near cities. Why? Because they would basically destroy all of the local agriculture. So goats can also get out very easily. They can find their way out, jump out of fences, and end up really destroying. So taking care, that's also a question. In other words, taking care not only of yourself, but of your neighborly relations. And all of this comes into the characteristics of Moshe. But Moshe is also, so he's running after this kid, maybe a bit frustrated or angry, and then suddenly he realizes, wait, this kid was thirsty. So that he kneels down and, and takes care of it with mercy. And now he knows that it's tired because it's run all of this way just because it's thirsty. So he picks it up and carries it on his shoulder. It's a beautiful picture of Moshe. Imagine Moshe, when later becomes the shepherd of the people, is putting this sheep on his shoulders, this baby sheep, and just slowly carrying it back to the flock. So the Midrash is telling us that the first description that we have of Moshe, it's not just that the Torah is telling us, oh, by the way, we want you to know what Moshe was doing on Sunday morning to help Yitro out and his daughters out. No, it's a characteristic. It's really telling us, this is leading us to Moshe, because the next stage is when he goes down to meet the people and try to convince them to come out. And they won't listen to him just because of his own belief in Hashem, and it's obvious to him that they won't. But he has to stand up for them, but also stand with them. And I think that's a very important when we think of what are the characters of a leader. It's not only standing up to Pharaoh and not being afraid, and standing up for the rights of the people, from the smallest person, this Hebrew person that he didn't know, and stood up for him, but to the people, right, standing up for the entire people as well in front of Pharaoh. So in order to be able to take care of the people, and Hashem says, I want to know if he's the one who can take care of my people, so he needs to see him taking care of animals, see him taking care of the sheep. And then Hashem says, well, you are the one. In the same way that he says to King David, you are the one to become the king. And King David was so surprised, right? He says, it can't be me. His father says, it can't be him. He's not the strongest. He's the weakest. He's the shortest of all of his brothers, King David. But no, he becomes the shepherd. So we have two parts of this Midrash that we have seen, right? We have the first part that talks about, right, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, and then it sort of interconnects and says, and the righteous have to take care of the orchard, and then it tells us these stories about King David and Moshe, who were shepherds. But I still have a bit of a question, like, how is this discussion about the Shekhinah, the divine presence, the Western Wall, the temple in ruins, how is it connected? I'm wondering if any of you have any idea of how are the two parts of the Midrash actually connected. The first one that talks about the Shekhinah, the divine presence, and the second one that talks about shepherding. Does anyone see a connection between the two of them? It's an open for anyone who wants to comment. Paula, bevakasha.
Yeah, to me, it makes me think about this parasha, Terumah, where it's written, make a temple in Den, then I will go to dwell in Den. There is no temple, but we have a piece of our neshama is a piece of the divine essence. So we have the possibility to grow and to be better and to be leaders as well.
So in other words, you're saying this is not only a question of Moshe, but it's also a personal message towards us in a way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Of course, we're not talking and we can be like Moshe, because I mean, no, but I mean, we can be better. We can be a better version of ourselves, and we can try to connect. And yeah, not Moshe, but at the same time, there is this Midrash when it's written. I think they ask, I don't know, is that Susa Ben Susa that is written there, that there one Midrash that is there is one Midrash that is asking that God is not going to ask you if you were like Moshe. He's going to ask you if you are going to be like Ben Zuma or Ben Shusha. Ben Zuma, I think. I don't remember very well. So maybe we can be...
Zusha, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you. Let's hear any other ideas we have here, and then we can try to put some together. Anyone else want to share? Like, where do we see a connection between this long discussion of the Shekhinah being in exile and then going into the idea of shepherding? Anyone else have any idea? Any thoughts? You're all welcome to share. There's nothing wrong and right here. Yes, please, Nina.
Okay. I don't know, but my mother was a shepherd. They had sheep when she grew up. And to be a good shepherd, you have to know the animals, And I think about what you said about the temple, and you don't actually need a temple to see Hashem's to see Hashem in everything, and you can see in the eyes of the other person, or the flower of the earth, everything. So to be a good shepherd, it's a lot. I don't know what to explain it, but it needs to see more than myself, to see the other, see everything in the life, I think.
Thank you. And I think just adding to what you're saying, the shepherd also has to be very much connected to nature and to know the plants, right? And to know where to go at what time and the sources of the water. It requires a lot of connection to nature itself, a lot of knowledge, a lot of tradition that is passed down from one shepherd to the other. You can have traditions, right, that are thousands of years old. If you have communities that are still living in the same place for many generations, you have Bedouin tribes today that pass down from one to another. And just to remind, like I was saying before, this is what we are in a sense. We are sheep, right? In as a flock, right? As King David says very clearly, and we also, this is our tradition, is very much one of shepherding. And as you said very beautifully, Nina, I think shepherding is caring, and it's caring for the other and being there and noticing, and it's a way of life. It's not only right. It's not only a profession; it's really a way of life. And when we talk about the Shekhinah, right, and I think that in my mind, the Midrash is also we're talking about the first generations after the temple has been destroyed, and there's a huge heartbreak in the people, and huge questions of how can we continue on without the temple. And I wish they had the simple answer that you said at the beginning, Nina, and you also, Paula, said that we can find the Shekhinah. It's there. I mean, it could be nice to go to the Kotel, and it can be to feel that connection, but it's also in the person next to us. It's also in the way that we act. It's also in the caring for each other. and that the Shekhinah, right, it says that if a man and a wife care for each other, right, and have proper loving relation, the Shekhinah is between them. None of them own it. It's not that I am more holy, so I have a Shekhinah. No, it's a Shekhinah benehem, it's between them. And it also says about the Kruvim, right, that were in the Holy of Holiest. It says also that the Shekhinah hovered between, right, these two figures of man and female that were a male and female that were there. It's something that you cannot grasp, and what is beautiful about the Shekhinah is that you cannot grasp it. It's something that you can only feel because it's in the way that you relate towards the other. So if you ask yourself, what does it mean to be a true leader? It means to be able to notice the needs of the other in order to help them out of whatever situation they are in. And in that sense, true leadership is a true leader is the one that the flock will want to follow because they know that they can depend. But we've had enough leaders, and maybe still have leaders of countries around us today, that if you ask the people themselves, they don't have trust in their leaders. It could be a leader of power, it could be someone who has a lot of power and a lot of control. But at the end of the day, the people will hate those leaders and will not follow them. It's the last person you would trust and want to follow. And we know, if we look at throughout the generations, the person who becomes a true loving model as a leading figure are the people who care for others, not those who thought that they had control over others. And in that sense, the Midrash is doing the same, I feel, by reflecting on where is the Shekhinah and then giving us the answer. It's through the examples of shepherding. This is where the Shekhinah is. It's not only these are the righteous that God chooses, but this is the Shekhinah. This is where you will find the Shekhinah today when we no longer have the Mikdash. Michael, did you unmute yourself?
But I didn't intend to say anything, but maybe I can say about the great leader and his flock, because in the end Moshe is not allowed to enter the land of Israel because the people failed, and he really didn't fail. But you cannot have a leader who you cannot call him. I mean, because he had to kind of pay the price. In kind of solidarity with the people who failed with the golden calf and with and so on. So even here you cannot have this a leader and the people, and he is on his own level, and they are there. And since he didn't succeed bringing them there, so he himself did not go in there.
And I think, thank you, Michael, and I think very much so that a true leader who's one who doesn't only think of himself, even in this deeper sense that you mean. I mean, it's even sad, or you can even say unfair to Moshe after all he did for the people, but he is so humble that he is the people himself, and he is representing that, and he's also representing a vision that we are not there yet, right? That. But he's at the very moment in which Hashem says to him that these are the psukim that I read at the beginning. When Hashem says to him, "You won't go there," that's when he is afraid that he can take that for himself. But who will be there to continue this? Because they will be so broken and they need me. He realizes how much he is, exactly because of what you're saying. I think that's the moment when Moshe realizes he is the people, and therefore what will be with them. And then Hashem says that we will find, right, the next leader who becomes Yoshua, and we can talk about the difference in leadership between the sun and the moon, as between Moshe and Yoshua. But Moshe has led them all the way until, and done all of led them along the path through everything they went through the 40 years to reach a place in which they can be. The second generation can be the ones who actually step forward into the Holy Land, but also remembering, like you're saying, Moshe, he is the people and he's not there yet. We still have a vision to look forward to, because there's a danger in thinking that you've already gotten there. Nina, you have your hand up again?
Yeah, thank you. You are this shiur was so very nice. I would thank you first of all. But I think a good leader, if you see the glory, if you see Hashem in other eyes, you have reached something. And it's also about the shepherd. If he can lead a sheep, the sheep is not easy to lead. So if you can lead a sheep, you have reached a long way. But the really question for you, I am very, I wonder about Yitro. He followed Moshe. Can you tell me from Egyptian man, was he the first who, what do you call it? I don't have the the language for explaining, but Yitro, his father, Moshe's father-in-law, was he actually follow Moshe after, or what can I explain? The first in conversation or
convert.
something.
Yeah.
The first to convert.
So what is interesting is that Yitro, I think you used a very nice term, he follows Moshe. That's one of what we've learned in the Shiur. Who do you follow? Who would you follow if you were given a choice, right? Who is someone that you say, I can trust and follow? That is a leader. And Yitro follows Moshe, right? And we know this from the Torah itself, that it says that Yitro follows Moshe and leaves his own land and comes down and even becomes the one who gives Moshe advice. According to, right, it appears that he converts, like you're saying, right, that he converts from becoming the priest of Midian to becoming a priest of Hashem, sort of. But what's very interesting is that Moshe tries to convince him to remain. Right? He says, "You found your place. Please stay with us, and stay with your daughter, and stay with your, and stay with the people that you have become a part of." And he says, "No, I know that I need to go back to my people as well." So maybe it's interesting that Yitro himself is the leader, right? He's the Kohen, and he goes back with the Emunah of Hashem and brings that back to the Midian, to the country that he has come from. So it's very interesting. He's a leader. Moshe, right? His daughter is a leader. We know because she knows how to act, and we have that the story of of Tzipporah also saving the life, right, of their son. Gershom. So she's the leader, Yitro is the leader, Moshe is the leader, and these are the leading figures during a time in which everyone, the biggest danger is that they will just give up. My father was a slave, I'm a slave, there's why would I ever have hope? And the leader is someone who gives you the hope to step out of the desperation of what you're in, to believe that there could be a different future. So the leader is the one who can lead the flock out of the darkness into a place of light. The leader is the one who can give the hope to know that something else will change. And the leader has to be very strong in that messaging. And that's also where I think the Shekhinah comes in. The Shekhinah is the divine glory that comes with the leader to give that sense of hope and spirituality and light to the people. Because the biggest danger is to think that nothing will change and this darkness will continue. So I think that is another character. We've touched upon many characteristics of why Moshe becomes the leader, but at the end of the day, the big test, as you said, Michael, yes, he doesn't lead them all the way there, but he leads them out of slavery to believing in Hashem, to coming to Har Sinai, to giving us the tradition, right, to be a people of Israel. And that is all what Moshe does for us till this very day. And that is why we continue the Torah Moshe, the right, which is which really is the identity that we have that continues to give us the strength till this day. Maybe the last thing that we can say about a leader is that many people do many great things in their life, but the minute they're gone, they are forgotten. But someone who is a true leader is someone who passes on something that really, because it's not him, like you were saying, it's not him, it's the people. So it's something that continues on for the generations to come. So we've now started, right, this journey with Moshe, and I hope that as we read this week's parasha, you can also imagine yourself as a little sheep following him right along the way, or that you get the koach from Moshe to be pulled out of whatever darkness you may be in to a place of hope and light through the Torah, which is the Torah of light, right? Comes from the source of light, and just to take the path forward and know that we're following the path of Hashem. So thank you all, and Shabbat Shalom to you all. And you're welcome to read the parasha for yourself, learn with someone the parasha, open up some of the midrashim. All we did is learn one small midrash. There's so much more to explore. So I hope you enjoy learning as well. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Thank
Shalom.
you.
Shabbat
Thank you
Shalom.
very much.
Thank
Toda
you.
rabba.
Shabbat Shalom.
Bevakasha, nice to see you all. Litraot.
Thank you.